get that. It's try for the first available, because when we went ahead with 10, it was great, and the lines were very short. But then when we came back out of it, I didn't the lines were super long. Yeah, I mean, it like time to slot to like hold some, by the time they did once that was a tax slot, but it was very cool, but it takes 4 minutes to get on, so not even. So very fast.
Okay, guys. How's it going? Good. I'm sorry I missed all of last week. How was it? How was last week? What did you guys think of Ramsey? You want to hear? So then I really need to hear your thoughts. What was it? Yeah. What do we think of databases as a general concept? Kind of cool, huh?
But like, I personally was not able to see where the data is going to be saved, and I guess it was your question too.
Oh, yeah, it's hard because I can't see the database.
Yeah, that's a tricky one because we can interact with Mongo with the shell, Mongo shell, excuse me, is what it's called, through the terminal. But then you're still just interacting with the database, and it's not really all that different from how you're interacting with it in your application. If you want to go and see the data itself, you can like dig into Mongo on your computer, but it's all going to be like this crazy file type that you're not really going to, you can't read it. It's not, you know, if you save a object with that represents a person with a name of, you know, whatever, Jimmy, you're not like, you're not going to be able to read the string Jimmy anywhere in the database file. Because it's, you know, matching all that stuff up into crazy data stuff that I don't totally understand, but it makes it super fast. So the like closest you can get is interacting with the Mongo shell, which you can look into. I'll see if I can find a good resource on that posted in the resources channel. But as far as like setting up an application with a database, do we feel pretty good? Yeah, that's fine. We're gonna do it again today. And hopefully that will. And then how do we feel about APIs? Working with APIs, third-party APIs, and then building our own, or like understanding how they work on the inside. Pretty good?
No.
No.
It's also like, I totally understand the callback and how
Oh.
what orders things happen.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. That's a tricky part of JavaScript because Node is, and JavaScript is asynchronous. So it works in like an event system. So you call that function that's maybe going to the Spotify API and getting a list of songs back. And the compiler is going to run that code. And then, you know, that's going to happen. Yeah, while you don't have the data, JavaScript is, the compiler is going to keep going through your file. And then like when it comes back, it'll take care of it. But it's going to keep working through your code until then. And there's a great video that I'll post on what's called the event loop, which is how JavaScript manages all that stuff. It sort of explains like how JavaScript goes through, not really goes through a file, but how it like evaluates code, in particular asynchronous code like that. But that's what the callback is for. It's like that's the function that's going to handle the response. So that's totally, yeah. It's one of the things that like turns off a lot of developers coming from other languages. Because yeah, so you know Python, right?
Yeah.
Python is threaded, right? You can do threading in Python.
I don't. Maybe in Python 3, I think that's like one of the things in Python 6.
Okay, all right. How do you handle asynchronous stuff in Python? Or maybe you don't. You don't. Yeah. So some languages just don't, which means that like your code will just go through line by line, and if line 20 makes an AJAX call, or goes to a server to get some data, then it's stuck on line 20 until that response comes back, and then you can handle it. This means that like going through your file is maybe a little slower, but it also means that like line 21 is not going to happen until line 20 is finished. Other programming languages like Ruby use threading. So you basically like spawn a whole separate process that then is going to manage the asynchronous part, and then you have to merge those threads back together. And that's like a high level understanding, but that's like the limit of my understanding of how threading works, because I don't code in Ruby. But that's sort of the gist of it. There are other ways in JavaScript of handling asynchronous code. One is called promises, which is a more advanced feature of JavaScript, which we won't talk about in this class. And then in the new spec, there's a whole new set of tools that are a native part of the language for handling asynchronous code. They make it a little easier. It makes it read more like synchronous code. Cool. So today we're talking about application architecture. And in particular, we're going to talk about one called MVC. We are going to do, I'll have like, quote unquote, like lesson, like slides up here that I'll talk through or whatever, for maybe like 30 minutes. And then we'll spend the rest of the class talking about MVC by building an application and thinking about MVC. It's not going to be all that different from the applications that we've built so far. But the reason that we're doing this is to like walk through an application and talk about like the code itself and where it goes, but also talk about the thinking behind like writing the code. And next class is going to be our lab. So today we're going to build a whole application, or most of an application, that is relatively similar in scope to what you guys will build next class for your labs. So it's like a good sort of like sample. You guys will be able to refer to the application that we built today when you're building out your labs next time. Cool. Okay. So here's our agenda for the day. How did people feel about the homework? Should we do a fist of 5? Sure. Yeah, fist of 5. Blah, blah, blah. Okay. Take my mouse. Should we go over the homework? I feel really embarrassed that I have to ask this, but what actually ended up being the homework assignment?
Yeah, actually, that's a good question.
Not sure.
It is,
Yeah.
It's a combination of exercise 3, 4, and assignment. So basically, I just like open it up to be a basically like full stack application and make a call to the API, like to the Pokedex API, and then store that information in the database.
Oh, okay.
Or create a
Do you want to walk through the homework assignment?
Sure, but it's like free form.
Okay. We could like live code it. You, by which I mean you could live code it. All right, or we don't have to. So it's something to do with the Pokedex API. That's not the one that we built in class, but another one, like a live one. And then you guys built an application around it. How many people finished it? So we can't use anybody's as a solution. Okay. Hi. Okay. So this is where we are in the class. We're here talking about application architecture. Next is the lab. We'll do the lab, and then I think we have only 3 classes, like lesson classes. And then we have the final project, and then we have the like delivery of the final project, which is the very last session that we're together. Everybody presents their final project. At the end of class, I'll talk about the lab and then the final project as well. We want to get started on all that. Okay. So homework.
a general question about
Okay.
if in the context of Express and like this app object, how do you connect with, if there's a button on your UI and like there are like set of actions that are supposed to kick off? Like so far we only use like submit form and
Yeah.
post method action.
Mhm.
How do you do that? Like for any like components of the UI, there's like a set of actions that are supposed to kick off on the server side.
Okay, so you don't necessarily mean like submitting a form. You just mean any other sort of like button in the like the like button that has to go to the database and do something. So that is like when you load up a bunch of posts on Facebook and you like one of them, the page doesn't refresh, right? That's what we use Ajax for. So when you click that like button, that's going to trigger an event because that's probably a link or there's at least an event listener on that like button. It's going to trigger an event that is going to make an Ajax call with your username, your user ID, the ID of the photo or the video or whatever, whatever the data that Facebook needs back to the server. The server is going to have a post. It's going to make a post request because we're trying to update something on the server. And the server. Sorry.
Does the object on the link or like the button, does it have a message?
It would be defined in our event handler. Is where we figure all that stuff out. So some of the data would be in the DOM, right? Like the media, like the individual post or image or whatever it is that you're liking. Like that information would be in the DOM. Others of it would be sort of in the application memory in your browser. There's ways of managing what's called state, which is where that could be handled. But,
One problem I had was Express didn't recognize DOM. Or like Node didn't recognize DOM.
yeah.
So when I thought that I should like work with DOM objects, I just couldn't.
Yeah.
And I realized I could just use post method in some form.
Interesting.
Like how do you?
Yeah. So what is the DOM? DOM is what was it? Document object. Where does the DOM get built? Yeah, the browser. What is Node?
Non-browser.
Yeah. So Node is a server-side JavaScript runtime, whereas the DOM is an object built by the browser. So these are two separate ends of our application. So it's like they're happening in different places. It's almost like we're here in this building, we're the server, and the browser is over there in that building. And we've got like a long string with cups or whatever on the other side, and that's Ajax or cell phones, whatever, high tech or whatever. Cell phones, walkie-talkies. That's what that Ajax is how we communicate from one building to the next. But they're separate. There's rotary.
You really don't want to go over Ajax.
Okay, we can do that. I don't know. We can maybe work it into the application that we're going to build at the end of class today. We'll try that. Okay. So this is our homework assignment. We're going to do it live. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'll probably make a lot of typos. So get pumped. Feel free to throw stuff at me if I make a typo or just heckle. Heckle, right? Come on. Yeah, something like that. Okay. So here's our assignment. We're going to be working with this Poke API, which is an API of all the Pokemon. We're going to have to read documentation to figure out how we can interact with it, but these are more or less the steps that we're going to walk through to build our application. We're going to set up Express. We're going to connect it to a database and we're going to connect it to Mongoose and create a database. We're going to create some handlebars templates, and then we'll set up a form to, I guess, search for Pokemon. Okay, so that we can search for Pokemon, and then we'll display that information about Pokemon. And then we're going to stop there, so that we have time for the rest of the class. All right. So what I want to do is come here. Hello. So here I am. I have to zoom so far in on this thing. Here we go. Maybe it's too far. So here I am in my assignment folder. And I have this Pokemon API folder. What's the first thing I need to do when I want to set up an application, when I want to build something? Yeah, npm init. What's npm init going to do?
Set up the package.
Yeah, create a package.json file. Perfect. So then I can, install my dependencies and go crazy. So let's see. What kind of dependencies, or what am I going to need in order to build this application? Express. Yeah. Npm install save express. What else? Yeah. So express handlebars. What else? Oh, what was it? I heard it. Yeah. What does body parser do? Also, is it like this? I think so. Does it parse JSON? So, what are the parts of an HTTP request? The header, the method. If I have a head, yeah, the body, head, shoulders. Body parser is going to parse that body for me and give it to me as part of the request object in a format that's easy for me to use inside my route name, which is an object. What else do I need?
Can you do that one more time?
Yeah.
That entire sentence you just said about what that was,
Forgot the whole sentence.
exactly how you said it.
I forgot the entire sentence. I really did forget the entire sentence. No.
Just telling you what that is.
Body parser is gonna parse the request object into the. No, totally. Okay. Body parser. So the head, the shoulders.
Yes.
So there's three parts to the HTTP request. The one that we care about is the body. That's going to be like the actual information that we're sending. A really common format is like when we submit a form. When you click the submit button on a form, all the fields in that form, we actually need to send both the field and the value back to the server. And that's going to go in the body of our HTTP request. Body parser is a part of Express that is going to take pull that out of the incoming request and add it to the request object in a way that's easy for us to use in our route handlers.
Okay, thank you.
All right. What else do we need? Anything else?
I installed Nodemon.
Oh, what did you install?
Nodemon.
Nodemon. Okay, we can install Nodemon. Yeah.
Install this thing called request.
Interesting. What does request do?
It's something that makes requests called.
Yeah. Did you guys do? You guys did Ajax last time, right? You guys did, new XML HTTP requests. Yeah. Yada yada yada. How much code did you have to write just to get some data from another server? Was it like 10 lines, 15 lines? Right? It's a lot. Nobody's got time for that. Every time I need to get data, or every time I need to like a photo or something like that. Yeah, so we build these libraries that make it easier. Request is one of them. Super Agent is another. jQuery has a bunch of tools for making Ajax calls on the client, etc.
So request is for getting the data from API.
Well, yeah, it's for making Ajax calls.
Also, if you're using NOM, when you use XML, HTTP.
Yep, and if you dig into the source code of request, you'll find that that's what it's saying. Yeah. So we can use requests here, but you're going to have to walk us through how to do it.
What? Sorry.
Or we can use requests in the sample application, but you're going to have to walk us through how to do it.
So let's just use HTML.
Okay, all right. And you'll walk us through how to do that.
It's working, though, John. It's working.
But I don't understand what it is.
Okay, so Express we're going to use to build our server. Express handlebars we're going to use to render our views. Body parser we're going to use to parse the body of any incoming requests and work on that data. we need to get data from an external API, and then we need to save it in a persistent form. Man, yeah, if only we knew a way to persist data. Mongoose? What's Mongoose?
Way to persist data.
Yeah, perfect. Okay. Mongoose. So I think that's all we need for now. When you guys set up Mongoose, did you have to install Mongo first or as well? Mongo should be a dependency of Mongoose. Hopefully this doesn't take forever. Okay, back here. Okay, so we've installed all our stuff. And if I ls, we have package.json, we have node modules folder. What do we need next? I think I heard it. What was it?
I created like an index.js.
Perfect. Yeah, so I'm gonna touch index.js, and then I think if I come back here to Atom, there it is. It zooms in my text, but not this. Okay. And then to get started with just like a basic Express application, I'm gonna do var express equals require express, right? Is that too small? Come on.
I was really trying to look at your folder names.
Oh, okay. My folder name is Pokemon API. Just very, very, very.
So sorry, why do you have the should the JSON file appear or do you touch it?
So we're just creating index.js. We're going to use an API that someone else has built elsewhere and not the JSON file that we used in previous assignments. So that we can practice making AJAX calls.
Okay. I just made my own folder to do this, I don't.
When I push this as the solution, it shouldn't interrupt with that. Okay, so var express, var HBS equals require express handlebars, and then that's what's up. All right, somebody walk me through how to set up a simple Express application that's going to respond to a root route and just send the string hello world. Should I pull up my slips, my random student picker? So I just want a simple Express server that we can run.
Okay. var app to express. So express every element.
We can set that part up now, if you like.
App that engine. Books handlebars. Yeah, yes. Parentheses, curly brackets, default. Yeah. So,
Default, is it default layout?
yeah.
What do we want to call it?
Main.
Perfect. What else?
App set.
You like that? You into? Keep going.
app.get,
App.get.
slash, function, request, and response. And rest. Yeah, that's it.
Let's start there for now. We're almost done.
And then app.listen. 3000.
Perfect. I think that finishes everything. So now I should be able to come here and run nodemon index.js, and we should be able to come here and go localhost, let's say 3000, yeah. And you can't really see it, but it's up there. It says, hey world. Ooh, that's much bigger than that. But, okay, so if we look back at our requirements, that's number one, set up a simple Express application. Number two is to set up and create our database. Does somebody want to volunteer to walk me through that part? Yeah. How do we do that?
I would say var require.
Oops, that's not what I wanted. This is what I wanted. Yeah, so up here, var mongoose equals require mongoose.
Var schema equal mongoose schema. Create a new schema based on that. So
What do you want to call it?
this schema, not schema.
And then it looks like that.
Schema and then whatever you want.
Yeah. Do we know what we want to put in it?
I guess we want to name
What's that?
like name
Yeah, something like name.
abilities.
Oh, moves. Was this an array or something like that? Moves. So I want to pause for a second because I'm worried that if we keep going with this, we'll end up spending a lot of time going through the solution, and that will take away time from the lesson and then the application that we're planning on building in the end. How would you guys feel if instead of building the solution here live, I built one tonight after class and pushed it, and then like we can review it at any point or whatever and something like that. But then we kept moving with the course material. How does that? I want to do a vote because I know we've already started. So
Can you be kind of like heavy with comments?
yeah, I can absolutely do that. Comment the crap out of everything. Does that sound good? So raise your hand if that is what you would like to do. Okay, cool. Okay. So.
Also do exercise 3 and 4.
GA does not pay me overtime, Miriam. No, of course I can. So bold. Okay. So, like I said at the beginning of class, today we're talking about MVC. And MVC is what we call an application architecture. It's the first of two that we're going to talk about in this class. The second one is going to be what's called a single page application architecture. We'll have an entire class dedicated to it. Yeah. Forget bonds. How many people are familiar with MVC or have heard of it? At the very least, I've heard of it. Yeah. MVC stands for Model View Controller. And as I just said, it's an architecture pattern for organizing an application. We're borrowing this term architecture to mean two things. One, a way of organizing our code in our code base. And two, a way of thinking about our application as we're building it. This was popularized by Ruby on Rails, which Ruby on Rails is a framework for building web applications. It was really grounded in this idea of convention over configuration, which is to say that we'll be really, really strict and opinionated about how we think about our application. It means that in some cases we'll have to do something crazy in order to make a feature work, but 90% of the time we'll be able to build something really quickly because we have a framework, not just for where we put our code, but how we think about writing code in building out a feature. And once we kind of adopt that way of thinking, we can pump out features really quickly. We can pump out entire applications really quickly. So that's one of the reasons Ruby on Rails became really, really popular as a framework, is because it was very opinionated about this idea of MVC. And the reason for that is what we call separation of concerns. Separation of concerns, excuse me, is this idea of taking anything in our application, or anything that our application does, and dividing the parts of it into sort of like discrete and singular concepts. So if we think of a feature, or rather the concerns that we're separating are, what is our data? So if we have, let's talk about a user, a feature of, or like a user inside of an application, your user profile. The data for that user is what we're going to call the model. And it's where we're going to describe everything, all of the data that we're going to save inside of our application, everything that we're going to work with in our application. The view is, as it sounds, how we're going to see, how we're going to present that data to the user. And then the controller are the actions that are going to sort of like marry those two together. So a user is what we would call a resource in our application because we can create them, we can edit them, we can delete them. And we're going to divide anything that we can do with that resource along those lines, according to the model view control. Okay. So we're going to talk about each of these three more in depth. The first one we're going to talk about is the model. We've already kind of talked about models in this class a couple of times. And we've already built what could arguably be called models. For instance, when we built our card game, War, we built out our understanding of what cards are into the code. And that's really what a model is. Yeah, that's another model. That's also a model, or could also be a model. Yeah. So the model is going to be the data of our application, what it's going to be built upon, and all the attributes of that data. The technical term that we could use for this is the things, or the stuff, that our application is going to be working with. So whether that's users, whether that's cards, whether that's decks, whether that's cars, those would all become models. We work with models, you guys would have worked with models in the class on databases, right? When you guys built out your schemas for your, what was the activity you guys did for Mongoose in class? Quotes?
Oh, yeah.
Did you guys build out a model for quotes? What a quote would look like? Maybe not.
Technically, we're supposed to, I get that part of the assignment, I was like, I need to work.
That's very important. Models are closely tied to this idea of classes that we've already talked about. We talked about when we talked about objects. And the model will describe our data and typically interact with the database. And usually your users are going to be interacting with your data through your model. But not every class is going to be a model. Does that make sense? So we think of Spotify, the application. Within the server of Spotify, there's a model for a song. There's another model for an artist. And there's another model for an album. These three models are all related, right? Artists have many albums and many songs. Many albums have songs on them, right? Each one of those models is going to be in charge of interacting with the database for controlling any individual song, artist, or album. And then it's through that model that we, as the user, will get certain songs or certain artists. For instance, when we run a search. But while each of those is a class, those are not the only classes that Spotify has. They'll probably have classes for, man, I don't even know. Like their search algorithm is probably going to have a class or be a class. What did you say? Yeah, that would be another model. Because it's one that's going to interact with the database and one that's going to interact, that we will interact with as user. So the other side of that is the view. Yeah.
Question for model, does it only store things that you want to persist in the database? Or would you create a model for something that's not in the store?
So we're developers. We do what we want. Did I already say that?
Yeah.
That's okay, good. Yeah. We're developers. We do what we want. Which is to say, like, we can build a model that is just going to represent some data that our application is going to be working with or organized around without necessarily having to persist it to a database. We've already done that in a couple of previous exercises. Generally, if it is important enough that you're building out a specific model for whatever idea it is you're trying to implement in your application, then it makes sense to save it to a database. Like when we built out a to-do list application a couple weeks ago, it would have been great to save our to-dos to a database so that they persisted when we refreshed the page. But we don't have to. Maybe it's like a cool minimalist thing to like write your to-do list and then when you refresh the page, it's all gone. You didn't really have to do them. I don't know. That's maybe not a good example. But yeah, we don't necessarily have to. It depends on what our requirements are for the application that we're going. That's a great question. Yeah, so the view is what the user is actually going to see. This is going to be the HTML that they're going to interact with, that they're going to click on, etc. Each model in the MVC pattern is going to have a couple of specific views, or there's rather a structured way of thinking about these views. One is the list or the index view. So when we built out that Pokemon application where we used the JSON file that I created, the home page was our list view, right? It listed every single Pokemon. Think of Facebook, right? When you go to your friend list, that's the list view for the friend model inside Facebook. Or in Spotify, when you click on an artist, that's the list view for all the songs by that artist.
So that includes if you're like specifying, if you're searching for people from certain school or whatever.
So if you're searching for a particular artist, you'll probably have a separate view, which is for handling search, which would be like your search results or something. But yeah. But if you were to click on a specific song, that would be another view, which would be the show view for a specific instance of a model. So the artist page is the show view for a specific instance of an artist. Or I guess in Spotify you can't like see a single song, right? There's no view for seeing a single song. There is?
Well, if you play.
Yeah, that's true.
Oh, well, great. Well, then that would be the show view for that particular song.
So when you create a that view, it's like they wanted to set these things up to set your models up. Or it's set a lot of models. So you need.
It depends on how you want to work. You could start at your views and work backwards, because then you'll know, based on what views you build out, what it is you have to put in your model. But you can also start at your model and then work forwards. So you maybe have comps from a designer for how it's supposed to look, and you go through those and you mark like, okay, I need, for a given song, I need the title, I need the album, I need the artist, I need how long the song is, the album art or something like that. So I'll go build out my model to include all of that, and then I'll go build out my views to show all of that. And then something that Spotify doesn't have, but that's very common in application, is a view for creating a new instance of a model, which we'll call the new view, and a view for editing a specific instance of a model, which we'll call the edit model, edit view. All these together are going to build out the user interface for our application and how we'll interact with a specific data type in our application.
When do those exist? Like that?
When?
Yeah. Like
Whenever
one
we-
instance with it.
Yeah, so whenever we need like our application to perform that action, or whenever we need for the user to be able to like work with the model in that way through our application, then we'll build out that view for our user. If our user is creating new Pokemon, then we'll need a new view for Pokemon so that the user can click a button, go to the new view, and create a new Pokemon by filling out a form or something like that. And then submitting it. Imagine if anybody could create their own Pokemon. Yeah, question.
So view is always a separate page, or it can be a part?
It can be a part of the page, and that's what we'll see when we talk about single page applications. Is it's like Wild Wild West. You can do whatever you want because we're programmers. In like traditional applications in Rails, traditionally, not so much anymore, they were their own separate HTML files. And it used to be that's how almost all web application works. Is when you wanted to do something, you had to go to a new page to do it, and then you'd go to a new page, fill out a form, hit submit, and then you'd go to the show page for that specific instance of a model that you just created. Now with Ajax, which we know now, you don't necessarily have to do that. Or with templating. And we'll talk about all of that when we do SPAs. So the last part is our controller. And our controller is the part of our application that's going to knit our model and our view together. So when I want to show a specific Pokemon, let's say, the controller is what's going to hear from the user that I want to show a specific Pokemon, go to the model, get that specific Pokemon, and then render the view for a specific Pokemon, the show view. That's what our controller is going to do. It almost sounds like the controller is a lot like a router. It is.
I was gonna ask, is there ever functionality that's implemented in the controller?
Yeah,
Like
the controller is where we're going to put all of our business logic, which is what we're going to call like the logic of how we actually work with our model. So when we actually want to create a new instance of a model, we'll do that within our controller. When we want to delete an instance of a model, like we want to delete a Pokemon or a to-do list item, to-do item, we'll do that through our controller.
So the controller is basically like
what our index.js file has been.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and what it will continue to be. There are ways in Express that you can abstract it out so that your index.js file is really just like setup and an entry point. And then Express has a router feature that you can use to build controllers. Express calls them routers, but they're effectively controllers for like a specific resource. And then you just add that to your app.
That's like the same as like requiring
Yeah,
certain files and stuff.
yeah, exactly. It's exactly like that. Cool. So that's what our controller does. All of these are things that we have talked about over the last couple of weeks, just not necessarily like this or from this point of view, right? We've talked about models for a long time, since we first mentioned objects or first learned about objects, right? We talked about one of the really powerful things about objects as a data format is that they let us model like our understanding of real world concepts in an application. And we built out models for cars and cards, decks. Similarly, we've talked about views, right? Ever since we started talking about Express and using handlebars, we've been building views for our application, right? And when we built out our Pokédex, we were building views like the ones that I've talked about here, right? We built out a list view. We built out a show view for a particular Pokemon. I don't think we built out an edit view. Did we? No. But we could have. Or a create view or a delete view, etc. And we already built out controllers. That's what's been going into our index.js file. Conceptually, it's basically just a controller. So, how do we feel about all that? Okay. What's a model? Stuff. Yeah. Things, stuff, data, specifically. Give me an instance of a model. Song. Yeah. Song is a model. What's another one? An artist. Yeah. An album. Those are all great instances of models. What about a view? Conceptually, what's a view in our application? What was it?
You can see in the browser.
Yeah, what we or the user can see in the browser. That's great. How are the view and the model related? Sorry? By controllers. Yeah, that's what's going to knit the two together. But what is a view doing that a model can't by itself?
Data.
Yeah, displaying the data to our user and giving our user a way to interact with the data. And then, yeah, what's the controller doing? The last piece of MVC.
It's the view and the model together.
It knits the view and the model together.
And also, oh, sorry, it also does routing.
Almost. So our router in Express is effectively a controller. But the controller isn't necessarily a router. Yeah. Yeah. Cool. So model view controller. Model is our application data. View is our user interface, or how we're going to interact with our data. And then our controller is the logic of our application for how those two interact. All right. Let's take a 10-minute break. I'll be here answering for any questions you guys have. When we get back from our break, we will build out an application that kind of knits all this stuff together. All right? Cool.
Zach, when you made that Pokemon JSON file, how did you go about creating it? Did you make it in Excel? Did you like?
I
run-
actually I pulled it from an API
Okay.
and then just
So there was
pasted
something that was already already.
it.
If
Yeah.
you were to go about to create
How-
something like that, where it had hundreds of different
Oh, okay. Do you have,
entries.
so you have data already?
Well, my final project. I'm going to make up a data set, although it'll be based on something that I will be doing real time at work.
Okay.
But so I made it in like a Google Sheet and exported it as a CSV, and then
Okay.
converted it to a JSON file through a third party.
Perfect. Yeah, that's what I was gonna suggest.
But I wasn't sure if you were dealing with some kind of data that was of a more sensitive nature,
Oh yeah.
what you would actually do in that situation, because you wouldn't want to transmit it over
Yeah.
some third party
Yeah.
your data.
So if you've got a
But-
CSV file that's like sensitive information,
Yeah,
you would not.
right.
So you could either write a script,
You
you
would
would do it
yourself.
yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's probably what I would recommend.
Yeah.
I bet you could find on the NPM registry, I bet you could find packages that will do that for you. I bet you there's one called like CSV2 JSON with the number 2 or something.
Oh, okay.
I bet you
Yeah.
almost $100.
And since it's since it would be on your server, or would not be.
Yeah. That would be running on your local machine. So it would be a big deal.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I'm not. That's something that eventually I may have to do.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I would recommend.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Either write your own script or find one.
Yeah. Yeah, I figured I'd have to do something a little bit.
Yeah. But it'd be like a cool exercise, right? You get to work with strings.
Yeah, I'll probably be using a lot of pre-made JSON files that are like a geo format, but then I'll be pulling in this data that maybe was an Excel sheet. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. There you go.
So, okay, thanks.
Yeah. Yeah.
So for the final project,
Okay.
I'm going to have these are the hospitals and these are payers, admission, beds, contracts, and
Okay.
primary service. Of course, it's confidential, so I'm gonna just put some dummy name of hospitals. So, and then users, they enter the payer. I can have the payer as a drop down or admission as a text box or something. So they will enter this data and it'll match us with this information to see which hospital they can go.
Okay.
So my question is that putting this data in, should I put it as a form of JSON form, or should I I don't know, if I need to save it in the database and then
Yeah.
query the database, that
Yeah.
would be easier, I guess,
Yeah, it will be.
rather than because if I put it as a JSON, then I should have lots of if and else statements and functions to just match the data.
Yeah. I would put it in a database, and then you can offload a lot of the getting the correct hospitals to your database query. So you guys talked about database queries last week. Find one. Remember that? No.
But yeah, I have it, I guess.
A little bit, yeah. So find. If you look at the Mongo documents, there's a method called find, which will run a query for the database and return all the results that match your query. Based on the form, what people have submitted, you can build that query to find all of the hospitals, in your database that match the query. So yeah, I would put it all in the database. If you have this in another format, it'll be a lot easier. Otherwise, you might have to sit there and write out a JSON file. Or you could build yourself a form inside your application for creating a new hospital, and then just for each one of these, fill out that form and submit it, and then create an entry.
Yeah, I'm thinking about are you talking about the view?
Yeah.
Yeah, for view,
For,
I'm
a
thinking
new
about
hospital.
a form of hospital, a form of forms so that they can enter all the data.
So that you could add these hospitals to your database.
Oh, that's interesting. So this way, I can build my database by entering the data. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Rather than just putting the data in.
Well, that's how you would put the data. You build out a form for yourself, and every time you submit it, it takes all the data in that form that you typed in, and then create an instance, a hospital, in your database based on the data you put in.
if I don't want to do it that way, then I should put it as a JSON, or I should put it.
Yeah, put it as JSON. Well, regardless, I would put it in your database. But if you have it as JSON, what you can do is seed your database. You just take your JSON file and put the data in your JSON file into your database.
I like that idea of like, I haven't think about it that way. Getting it from the fields and then each time just save it in the database. But I may need some help on it.
Yeah,
So it should be like office hours this week.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah. I'd like to try Yeah, but I don't know. Just like the time in there. Something yeah. The question is background. That's a lot of questions. Yeah. I know there's way I know. Oh gosh.
I need to do something.
Oh, you're
I just found out.
Yeah.
And I think.
Adding this and then so basically, creating patterns.
Yeah.
Once you want to make this, you can just create a last one.
I know it's fine, it's still.
So if you have things like you can have
Oh, man, yeah.
Some think the most expensive thing is regardless. So that's why you want to do
Yeah. That was one of the things that was discovered. Oh, you guys already.
Sounds like the beginning of Black Mirror.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so.
it's not that, so.
Yeah.
No, no, it's just like, starting to think about what I want things. I started all like yeah.
Right.
Every little bit of time. Oh, sorry, yeah. It's 5:30.
Some tools, because there's and then you form, right? One.
Yeah.
I think there are some tools.
Yeah, so, and then I
Okay. Does everybody feel well rested?
Yeah.
From their break? Let me make this a little bit bigger. Okay. So in class today, following MVC, we're going to build an application called HackerWall. HackerWall is just like Hacker News, the site, but it's better. It's better because we built it. Yeah. So we're going to make it better. So is everybody familiar with Hacker News? Yes, kind of. Okay. So I will show you what Hacker News is. Whoops. Hacker News is a, what would you call it? Like news aggregation, something like that. It's a website where people can post articles. This is it in all its glory. People can post articles or their startup or whatever. It organizes them by day. So the most recent ones get posted like here. And then you can upvote articles. So if you think one is cool, you upvote it. And then the ones from today with the highest ranking get right up here at the top. And then they're organized down like that. So the only features to this really are you can log in and create an account, which we're not going to worry about yet. You can post an article. That article gets saved to a database. And then you can view the list of all the articles that have been posted. You can view a page for a single article, and you can comment on a single article. So in class today, we're going to try and build out as much of that as possible. So anyone can post an article. Every article appears on the HackerWall homepage in the order that they are posted. Users can comment on articles. And then if we have time, we'll build in upvoting, form validation, and then sort of SPA-like submitting a new article through Ajax. Maybe we'll do that one so that we can get some reps in with Ajax. I don't know. So we have time. So, since this is practice for our lab next class, and practice for our final project, there are 2 steps that I want to go through first, before we start thinking about code, before we start writing any code. And they are, first, I want to do what's called domain modeling. And second, I want to attempt to create a rough project plan that we will follow through as we're building this out. To Marvin's question from earlier, which is like when we're doing a VC, where do we start? The views of the model. We'll kind of decide that in our project plan. So domain modeling is a really simple exercise that will help us gain clarity about what we need to build out in our application. This is a way for us to basically figure out what models do we need. And for those models, what views will we need? So thinking about this application as I've just described it, HackerWall, what entities or things does this application have? Articles, yeah. Anything else? Users, yeah. Anything else? One more. Comments, yeah. Was that you doing? Yeah, comments, perfect. So those are the 3 entities that our application is going to have. What properties do those entities have? Let's start with an article. What's that?
Author.
An author, sure. Title. A title. A link, yeah, or a URL.
Created on date.
Yeah, created on date or posted on date or something like that. Anything else? Sky's the limit, sorry?
The content.
Yeah, the content of the article. The sky's the limit here. Let me zoom this in. Anything else? Oops.
Likes.
Yeah, the number of likes. Whoa. My Zoom is going crazy. If we look here, we've got, so 624 points, that's the number of likes. 6 hours ago, that's when it was posted. We've got 172 comments, so the number of comments. Instapaper, I don't know what Instapaper is referencing. They all say Instapaper at the end. But, oh yeah, maybe it's a link to save to my Instapaper account. Yeah, it could be that. We're not going to build that out. We have the base URL for this article, right? Like this one says Indie Hackers, which I assume is the base URL for wherever this links to. Or this one says TechCrunch.com, which is probably the base URL for wherever this links to. Cool. Cool. So we just broke up the article entity. What about the comment entity? What sort of properties will the comment model have? An author.
Word count.
Yeah, word count. It's a great one. Message, gravatar, if we want to include their gravatar.
They posted.
Sorry? Yeah, the day they posted it. Yeah, absolutely. Those are all great ideas. Now let's think about our articles. That's going to be probably our biggest, most important model for this application, right? Is our articles. How will we need to work with our entity? Which is to say, what like actions will we expect to be able to perform on an instance of this model, on a particular article?
Creating instance.
Yeah, creating a new one, exactly. Deleting an article? Maybe?
Modifying.
Yeah, editing one. It's all up to us. Maybe for now, let's just focus on creating one. But as a great bonus, you could do editing an article. We don't know authentication yet. That's going to be next Monday. Tuesday, excuse me. But if we had the ability to build out roles or users in our application, we could make it so that you can edit the articles that you've posted or delete the articles that you've posted. Yeah. So that's the main model. Typically, we would do this like drawing it out in paper. And for your final projects, I highly recommend that. Creating like a list of all your models that you're going to build out in your application. And then maybe a list of all the properties underneath each one of those that you hope to build out, et cetera. And then you'll be able to know like which one of those, like, do I need a specific view for? Like, are we going to need a specific view to show a single article? Yeah, right? Yeah, we will.
That's what you see in the comments, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's why we're going to post comments. Cool. Okay. Let's create a rough plan for us to follow. Can you guys see this okay? Yeah. Wow. There. So as long as I write like that. Okay, so we've done our domain modeling. We know what project or what entities are all we're going to build out for our application. Should we just get started and start writing code? Definitely not?
I do it all the time, always.
Yeah, always a terrible idea. Any amount of like planning, I have found this to be true in my career, like any amount of planning, even if it's just like, here's a sticky note, let me like write 3 bullet points, like step 1, step 2, step 3, is like gonna help you so much, regardless of what the project is. Why is that the case?
You write yourself into a corner.
Yeah, you like code yourself into a corner, you like maybe forget like, oh, why was I building this out? Like, and now I have all this like crazy commenting functionality, but like, why do I need to do that? Oh, I completely forgot. The whole point of this application is to be able to just post articles to a forum board. But like, it's got this really robust forum feature and nothing to like post it to or whatever. Yeah. So, like, high level, what kind of steps are we going to want to go through to start and then finish this application?
Be a user. What would a user?
Sorry,
Do what a user would do, like if they came to the application.
unpack that.
So like, the user came to the application or your site, they wanted to share it, the first thing you see what they do, you know, they think through that.
Yeah. Sorry, user journeys. Yeah, that's what I was just about to say. Yeah, you're describing a process called user journeys, which we should do for our final project. Maybe like one of these upcoming classes. I'll schedule some time for us to do like user journeys for our final project. Then we'll talk about that then. What I am referring to here, what I'm trying to get at more, is like when we go through an exercise in class, I'll be here and I'll obnoxiously say, okay, I created a new folder, what do I need to do next, right? And you guys are like, ugh, stupid professor. Of course we need to run NPM init or something, so the first thing we're gonna wanna do is probably like scaffold out our server, right? Cool. We described our entities, right, like the models of our application, and we've talked about what kind of views we're gonna need. So once we have like a basic application running with Express, what would you guys like to do after that?
Structure, like the NPC structure of our project.
Yeah, build out maybe like a folder for our views, a folder for our models. Whoa. Okay. What should we call it? Like build out. Yeah, there we go. That's a great suggestion. Okay. So we built out a folder for our models, a folder for our views. We'll use index.js as our like controller. And then we'll have like our folder structure built out. What should we do next? What do we want to do next? How about that? That's maybe.
Outline how our program will work.
Yeah, we could outline our index.js file.
Yeah. Or pseudocode.
If we're thinking about MVC, what part of MVC is our index.js file affected? Yeah, control. Perfect. Oops.
But isn't the main controller, we still don't have some other controllers?
We could. So with Rails, what you'll often have is a controller for every resource. So if you have, I don't know, any like full featured application, like the one that comes to mind is to-do list, but let's go with Spotify. Spotify, if it were a Rails app, would probably have a controller for songs, and a controller for artists, and a controller for albums.
Would you need a master controller to combine all the controllers? So they
A controller, a meta controller,
Yeah.
kinda. Yeah, kinda. You need something for like the root route, right? Like on the home page. So yeah, kinda.
Okay.
That's a good point. Okay, so we've got our controller all outlined. After it's outlined, what do you guys want to do next?
I always think about this probably like what I'm gonna pass to the res render.
Okay. But we're gonna pass res.render.
Yeah, like data.
Yeah, so our
JSON file.
yeah, so what we want, so our controller, remember, knits together our views and our model, right? It sounds like what you're suggesting we do next is that process, basically. What data are we gonna pass to our views, right? Cool. So we need to create our views or our data first, our models first, right? Is there one of those that you guys want to do first?
Models.
Models first, okay. So for, we'll create and build out our models. There we go. Cool. So we'll have our controller for knitting our models and our views together, and then we'll build out those models so that we can actually start creating instances of an article or something like that. Once we've done that, what do we need to do, or what do we want to do?
Views.
Yeah, let's create our views. So, and then will we be done? Yep. All right, so let's start at step one. Okay, so I'm gonna come here. I'm in. So in the folder for this class, in 13 architecture, I'm in the exercise folder. I am going to create a new directory called in class, and I'm going to do all my work in that directory. The reason for that is if I ls here, I have a directory that contains the solution, which I'll push at the end of class, and I don't want those two to get mixed up. You guys are welcome to build it out in an in-class directory like I am, which is what I recommend. But you can do it within the exercise directory if that's what you want. So create an in-class directory inside the exercises directory, and then I'll cd into it. Is everybody here? In wherever they're gonna build out the application? All right. What's the first thing we have to do when we want to build out an application? npm init. npm init sy. There we go. Create our package.json, run npm init. Now, what are we going to need? What packages from npm will we need in order to build this application? Yeah, Express handlebars, Express,
Body parts.
body parser, npm install. Sorry?
Can I ask a quick question?
Of course you can.
You did NPM and -y,
Yep.
just keep all those.
Yep. Whoops. So -y means yes, maybe, or something, but it will accept all of the defaults. And then we don't have to sit there and, that's so nice. Yeah. Trying to make our life easy. So express handlebars, body parser, what else was there? NodeMon, yeah, NodeMon, maybe Mongoose, NodeMon, Mongoose. Anything else? That's probably a good list for now.
Can you, if you want to save some dev dependencies and other like general dependencies, can you do that all in one line? It's like save dash and then save dash dev.
I don't know. I don't think so. You can chain bash commands. So I could do npm install -- save some package and npm install -- save dev some other package. And it would run this first command and then run the next one after it. Are you raising your hand? Okay. But great. Next, I'm going to touch index.js. There we go. So now I have my index.js file. Where are we in our project plan? Yeah, we're still on step 1. So I'm going to come back here to Atom. And actually, I'm going to open up a new Atom so that I just have, there we go. So now I just have the folder that we're actually working with. And I'm going to open up this index.js file. And so what we want to do for step 1 is build out just a basic server, just like we did at the beginning of class. So I'm going to start with requiring our dependencies. There we go. So var express equals require express, var body parser equals require body parser, var HBS equals require handlebars, and then var mongoose is equal to require mongoose. Now, I'm going to cheat a little bit. Normally what we would do here is create our application, right? And we would do that by running var app is equal to express, right? I'm gonna cheat. Instead of doing that, I'm gonna come up here and say var app is equal to require express, and then we're just gonna call it right there. Whoa! I was reading somebody else's code the other day on GitHub, and I saw that, and I was like, oh man, of course I could just do that. I felt really dumb, because I've been a developer for a long time, and it never occurred to me that I could do that. But Yeah. You don't have to do that. I'm obviously just very excited about realizing that I could do that. So I thought I'd share it. Okay. So now we have our app. What should we do? What do we want to do next?
We want to set up our report and our application.
Yeah, let's set up.
Outline it.
Yeah, let's do something like app.get and then function rec res. Let's do res.send hey world, and then we'll do app.listen 3000. Okay. Would you guys like to type all of this stuff, or would you like to watch and then I'll copy and paste it into Slack? Too bad. You have to type it. I am just kidding. So general. Okay. Oops. Yeah.
In class folder, you're supposed to have like partially filled documents.
Partially filled document.
Like I have index.js that are written. So I guess we got.
I think so. Did you guys run git pull upstream master? And then that took it away?
Yeah, 'cause I didn't have it last folder. Added.
Oh no! God, that's like the second time I've done that. Maybe the third. I don't know. Yeah, run git pull upstream master, but save your work that you've done so far, so you don't lose it. Add, git add, git commit.
Do that and we lose this.
No, you shouldn't. But just to be safe. Sorry guys, I totally forgot that I brought candy again. Next person to answer a question, I'll throw some candy in. You get to choose between Twix and Kit Kat. Nice. Okay, so now we have our basic server, right? This is set up. If we run this, we go back to the terminal here, and we run, oops, nodemon index.js. This will start working. We come here, we can go to localhost 3000, and there we go. It works. So that pretty much finishes step one. Which I'll crop out. Right? Are we done with step one? Are we?
Yes,
Are you sure?
no.
Are we?
Oh, you gotta do the adding our stuff.
We could, yeah, we're done. We're done. I was being confused. We're done. We could set up handlebars, we could set up our connection to the Mongoose database now, or when we build out our views, then we can worry about handlebars. Or when we build out our models, then we can worry about Mongoose. Okay. So next step is to build out our folder structure. So I'm gonna go to the terminal, and I'm gonna create a new tab. Oops, wrong one. Which you do by hitting Command T if you're on a Mac. And I actually have no idea what the command is if you're not on a Mac. So I'm creating a new tab here in my terminal so that I can keep NodeMon running in the background. I'm sure there's a way to do it. The command, if you're on a Mac, is Command T. And now I'm back, I'm still in my in-class folder, so I can build out our folder structure. Okay, so I'm gonna start by running ls. And if I run ls, I have our index.js file, I have our node modules folder, and I have our package.json file. What else do we probably want in our code base? Sorry?
We've been making a lot of like these folders.
Yeah. So what's going to go in the views folder? Our layout file, our handlebars templates. If we're thinking MVC, yeah, we'll need a models folder, but the views folder is going to be for our views. So make here models and views. Ba, 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 ba. So our models folder will leave as it is, and we'll just have however many models we end up building out in the root level of our models folder. So, you know, article.js, maybe comment.js, something like that. But the views folder, we're probably going to need some more stuff in there, right? What kind of stuff have we had to put in there in the past? Yeah. So I'm going to make here views layouts. So if I write on this board, can everybody see? Not really good. Huh. Alright. If I write over here, can everybody see? No. Can you see all right if I write over here? Okay. I was worried the projections. Okay. So we're gonna have a views folder, right? And within it, we're gonna have a layouts folder. Within that, we're probably gonna have what? Yeah. Main HBS. And we're only gonna have one layout in this application. What we need to do is build out a folder structure here for the rest of our application. If in more full-featured applications or ones where resources are more defined, what we would do is separate each resource or the views for each resource into a specific folder, right? So if we were building Spotify, we would have songs or artists. Each of those would be folders. And then within each of those, we'd have maybe index.hbs, show.hbs, edit, view, etc. Any other views that we have related to each one of these. And these would be the views for that specific action on this resource, right? So the index view would list every artist. Or the show view would list a single artist and all the details for a single artist. So this is the layout for an application that has lots and lots of resources or where those resources are really defined. We're not necessarily going to worry about that for this application. Instead, we'll just have an index view, which is where we're going to the home page of our application. That's where we're going to list all of the articles. And then we'll have maybe an article view .hbs. That's where we'll have the details for a specific article.
Are those on the same level as layouts?
Yeah, they are. So I don't know if that makes it more clear. Kind of like that.
Oh, that's okay.
Does that help, those arrows? Okay.
Does it matter how you like nest the layouts, or is it just up to you and then you just?
It's totally up to you. You could just have them all loose in your views folder, or you could prefix them. So rather than index or something like that, you could have something like song index.hbs songs, show.hps, whatever, and then they're all listed in your layouts folder that way, but they're still kind of grouped together. The important thing, like there's no required organization format. At the same time, I think that if you're not organized, you'll have a hard time, or it'll become messy and you'll have to deal with that. Let's see, are we gonna need any other views for our application? Comments. I think we're gonna show all the comments for an article on the article itself. On the article view, excuse me.
The list view and index.
Yes, yeah,
Edit.
edit. Yeah,
User
if we,
add.
yeah, user, something like that. For now, we'll stick with this. If we were gonna add the ability to edit an article or something like that, we would add that here. Based on our views, how is the user gonna add a new article? What view will they go to?
The article page.
Article page is our show view. This is gonna show a specific article and all of the data that we have about that article. Sorry? Layouts. That's gonna be sort of the layout HTML for our application. Do we have a view for creating a new article? No, we don't. So let's just call it new. All right. So I'm back here in the terminal. I'm going to touch in the views folder. What am I going to do? Index. Views. So index, article, and new. Actually, index, show, and new. I'm going to call this show instead of article so that we understand what part of MVC and how we organize our views in MVC that plays in our views.
Is that like standard practice typically or just preference?
No, just for us. These are, so there are a couple of different naming conventions here. One thing we could do is instead of index, we could call this articles, plural, as a way of denoting that it lists every article or multiple articles. And then article, single, as a way of showing that that lists only one article. And then we could call this new article or something like that. Or if we had these organized in an articles folder, then we would know that new is to create a new article or something like that. There's no requirement, right? We are programmers, we do what we want. But we, as programmers, want to be organized. All right, so those are our views. So now, didn't work, okay. Are we all set up with our folder structure? If I come to Atom, we can kind of see it's super small here, but here are my views. Excuse me, my views, here are my models. Let's go ahead and create files for our models. What models did we say we were going to have in our application? We haven't built out any models yet. We talked about having
Users, comments, and articles.
yeah, users, comments, and articles. So for now, I'm just going to create an article model. And then what we'll do is in a record for a specific article, we'll have an array for comments, and we'll just put our comments in that array. And then if we have time at the end, we'll refactor that out so that a comment is its own model. Does that make sense? Kind of? Okay, we'll get into it when we start coding it. But for now, we're just going to worry about one model, which is our article model.
Can you capitalize the A because this is kind of like new class?
Yeah, exactly. So now, are we finished with step 2?
Do we need an index model?
Model? Do we need an index model?
To display the list, to deal with the index data that we're displaying.
So we'll need a index in our controller. We'll need a route for displaying, for rendering our index view and passing every article to it. But when we're thinking about models, the question to ask ourselves is, what is, right? So what is an index? Do we have an entity called index inside of our application?
Oh,
No. We have an article, so we'll need a model to represent an article. All right. Boom. Step 1, done. Step 2.
Why are we making users? Sorry.
Do you want to make users? So
Are we only doing it for the sake of not taking alternative?
well, we haven't covered authentication yet or authorization yet. So we could build out a model for a user, but we wouldn't have any way of controlling really like permissions or who is who or whatever around that user until after next Tuesday when we talk about authentication. Once we do, then we will be able to build out users. And you'll be able to say, you have to be signed in order to post an article. Or if you created this article, like if you were the one who posted it, then you can edit it. Or maybe you can moderate the comments or something like that. But until then, we don't quite have everything we need in order to build that out. Okay. Yeah. Do you guys feel happy with the folder structure we built out? Is there anything else you guys think we need? Are you guys okay with me crossing this off?
Comment,
Sorry,
comment model?
comment model. For now, we're gonna have comments be part of an article. If we have time at the end, we'll abstract that out.
Right, sorry.
Yeah.
You're not gonna have anything in the layouts.
We don't have anything in the layouts?
Index, name, and show are all in the views. That main. Do they need name?
Yes.
They do.
So under my, oh no, you're right. So we need to touch views, layouts, main dot handlebars. That's right. Now we have that main layout file. Okay. Let's take a 5-minute break. And then we'll come back. And we'll do let's do number 3 and number 4. And then we'll take another 5-minute break. And then we'll do number 5. Does that sound good?
Is this homework or the lab?
So I'm not gonna assign any homework for today until tomorrow. The lab is up if you want to get a head start.
Oh, it's not this.
Yeah, and I'll talk about that before we all go home for the day. You can either keep working on this, there's some optional bonus features that you can build out for practice, or you can review the things that we've covered over the last couple weeks so that you feel prepared for the lab. Or you can go. And that's your quote unquote. Okay, so 5-minute break. Go to the bathroom. Go get a drink of water. Go get a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Yes, you can have a Twix, but you have to leave the room.
Still gotta have these candy since Halloween. Yeah, like, I don't know, just like never candy really. So I guess I've had a candy.
just to install a cool.
Which is why or it seems to work for some people.
Whenever I do it locally, it works for me because we have like several solutions together and
Who knows?
so.
Yeah. It's not safe. like in the middle of the day. Okay. So step 1, finished. Step 2, finished. Step 3, bring it on. Let's do it. All right. Talk to me about step 3, you guys. We want to outline our controller, basically. Where is our controller in this application? Yeah, in our index.js file. So if I switch back to Adam, this is our controller. When we say outline our controller, what is it that we want to do here? More specific. Obviously, we're going to go through this. We're going to add comments, maybe like scaffold out like some basic code of what we want to do. But what do we want to put here? What do we want to do for this thing?
We want to combine the views and the models.
Yeah. So that's going to be tricky without actually having those first. So maybe we'll add a step 6, which is still like, I'll just call it knitting. We'll pull out some yarn and some needles, won't stay late. It'll be a good time. And that's where we'll take care of that. For now, what if we spend some time thinking about the routes that we think we're going to need for our application, and we build those out? And like some comments kind of detailing what we expect each route to do. How does that sound?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Whew. Man, so what routes do we need in our application?
Article index.
Yeah, so index, that's going to be our root route here. So we've already got that one, right? And for now, we're just sending hey world as a response. But what is this route going to do? This is going to be our index route, right? What was it?
This the articles.
Yeah,
A brief list of the articles, like a summary.
list every article. Yeah, that's what we're going to do with our index route. Whew, good work, guys. I think we're done. What else do we need? Yeah, article, or what did you say, Marvin?
I said article.
Yeah, article. So maybe something like app.get article.
Yes, that's the name of our handlebar.
Yeah.
So we're going to want to get a specific article. Yeah, there we go. We're going to add a parameter in here, so which is ID. Oops. This is going to be our show action in our controller. Here, we're going to get a single article, and we're going to render a view showing all of the details, all of the data about that one article. All right?
Comments.
Yeah, and the comments that are part of it. But the comments are going to be data on a specific article for now. So we can think of comments as an attribute of a single article, or of our article model. There we go. This slash article, this is a way of namespacing our data. So we know here we're dealing with articles. If we were building out our views folder so that we had an articles folder and then a bunch of views under that, and then maybe users folder and a bunch of views under that, and maybe a comments folder and a bunch of views under that, this would be particularly important. This is what the URL is going to look like, right? We already know that. But it's also a way for us to think about and work with our article, in this case, article resource in our application. Any action that we're going to add to our controller is going to start with slash article and then whatever. Does that make sense?
What is that action in the HTML? You have post, or like you have method post.
Yeah.
Like
Method,
action,
post,
and then
action.
like the
Action is, so when we're thinking of our controller is made up of actions. And each action is like getting some data from the model and then rendering it, or maybe performing some data from some calculations on that data and then rendering it. Here, we're using routes instead of an action. This is still kind of an action, but we're thinking of them as routes. So that's what that action refers to. It's like a more traditional version of what an MVC controller is doing. Does that kind of answer your question?
So the way you used it, a document object has an action, and it'll get
A form will have an action.
form will have an
Yeah.
action, and it could be a slash, and then f.get slash will get actively invoked.
It will send a post request to our application, which will set off an action at like wherever that action is, right? If we build out a form, it's something like form, right? Wow, I really can't type today. Here we go. And then this is where our form is. And then here we have, what was it, method equals post, and action is going to be equal to slash articles or pickles or something like that. This is how we identify the action in our controller. But in our case, we're using routes. So it's related, but slightly different. So this is how we're going to list a specific article. Thinking back to our views. So we built one out for our index, right? Our index route is going to render this index.handlebars file. This route, route handler that we've just written, is going to render our article.handlebars view, or show, we call it show. We need one that's going to render this new. Sorry, I heard it.
We do add that bit.
Yeah, so slash article slash new.
The fact that you invested it in under, at least for the routing, did that make us? Actually, never mind, it doesn't matter. I was gonna say, it has to be a partial, I mean, that's part of the thing.
No, so this is just going to be its own view. We're nesting it to keep our URLs clean and to like structure how we're doing this. So this would be a good convention to follow if you're building out an application. It's one that Rails enforces very strictly. This would, if we were building out Spotify, right, we would have /songs, /ID, /songs, /new. And it's a way of keeping our songs and all of our actions on our songs separate from the actions on our artists or our albums. So for our artists, we would have /artists/new or /artists/ID to show a single artist. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, okay. New view. So in our application, we're going to have a link, which is going to perform a GET request for /article/new. That's going to render our new .handlebars template, which is going to have a form with fields for all of the data, all the attributes on our article model that we want to save to the database. So it'll have like a URL field, right, where we can put in a URL. And then when they submit that form, we want to take all the data from that form and add it to our database. Looking at our controller, do we have everything we need to complete that process? Do it? Who thinks we do? Who thinks we don't?
So do we have a function for saving it to a database?
No, we don't yet. We'll get to that in maybe step 4. I guess what I'm trying to get at here is we have a method, right, for getting the view to create a new article. What we need is a way to take the data for an article that a user wants to add to our application, send it back to our server, so this index.js file, and then have our index.js file take that data and create a new instance. What do we need?
Do you want to write app.post?
Yes. We can also just do this. So this is called chaining. So we're taking this app object, we're adding this get to it, and then once that's done, we're going to add a post to it.
If you did it in 2 separate apps, get app.post, does it lose any functionality?
Nope, it's the exact same thing. This is just a little, I don't know, maybe cleaner, maybe not. We can do it that way if people prefer. Okay. This is going to a new article in the DB, and then render show view for new article. All right. So by starting with our controller, we're kind of working, or at least conceptually, in kind of the middle, right? On one side, we have our model, which is going to interact with the database. On the other side, we have our views. And as the controller, we're in charge of receiving a request, going to the database, getting some data, and then rendering a view, right? So this is like the middleman. Looking at our list of routes, thinking about everything we talked about earlier that we wanted to do or be able to do to articles in our applications, do we feel like we're done outlining our controller? I.e., do we feel like we're done with step 3 here? Maybe?
Well, we still need to send. Does the new post get aggregated into the article .id?
Yeah. So here we're going to get this new view, which is where our form will be. They'll submit that, and it'll send a post request to /article/new. Let me scroll down so that we can see all this. That post request will come to this route handle, right? Here, we'll take the data from that form, we'll create a new instance of our article, and we'll save it to the database, and then we'll render this right here with our new article. We'll have a new article, so we'll render the show view for that article. Sort of. So it's like step one, we're gonna get the new view, we're gonna fill out that form, we're gonna hit submit. That's gonna come here, send us here. We're gonna build that new application, and then what we're gonna do is redirect. So send our application here with the ID of the article that we just created. So it'll be /article/2 or something like that. This is then going to take that ID, go to the database, get that article, and then render our show view for that article. That's a great question. Okay. Are we done with step 3? Does anybody feel like we're missing anything?
Are we gonna be able to add it to
Are we gonna what?
edit an article? Or-
Edit an article? For now, no, we won't build that out. If you wanted to build that out, you could build an edit view and then have a route, something like /article/new or something like that. Or sorry, /edit, excuse me, /article/edit. That would render your edit view, which would get a specific article and then render basically that same form. So then edit anything for that article. Okay. So I think we're done here. Unless anybody sees something that we're missing. You're strong, of course, approval. Done! Should we celebrate?
Yeah, we have to move forward.
With the what?
We have to step forward.
Christine's on my side. Cut loose. All right. Okay. We're done there. Someone was saying something though. No? So step 4, we need to create and build out our model. We'll do that in our article folder here. So I'm in models article.js. Oh, actually, because I said I would, let me post this in Slack. There we go. Great. So now I'm in my article view. Here I need to build out my model. Did you guys go over how to use Mongoose to build out a model within last Tuesday? Yeah? Sort of? Okay. So what's the first thing I need to do to build out a Mongoose model? Create the schema. There's something before that. Yeah, require Mongoose. Var Mongoose equals require Mongoose. Then I need to create my schema. So var schema equals mongoose dot schema. Yeah.
If we required mongoose in the index.js, what would happen?
Then
Instead of like doing it
in so we did require mongoose here, right? That means that we will have access to this mongoose object and all the properties and methods on it inside this file. So later, when we want to go and connect to our database, we'll do that here using this require mongoose. For now, as we're building out our model, for an article, we'll be here. So we need Mongoose here, so we'll require it here.
So wherever we are using it, we need to require.
Yeah. Okay. So now I have the schema object, or class, excuse me, so that I can create a model. I do that with var article schema is equal to new schema. So schema is the class. I'm going to create an instance of that class, which is going to be my schema, or like the definition of my article model. So here inside this object, we're going to list all of the properties of our article. What were some of the properties that we talked about maybe like an hour and a half ago? An author, yeah. Author, what data type is an author going to be? A string. What else? A title. What data type will that be?
String.
Yeah, string. What else might I need? Sorry? Content. I've got it called a description, but yeah. String. Date. Mongoose will go ahead and build something, some date features for us, like created at and updated at. Yeah, so when we go to rendering a single article, or when we render our list of articles, we'll use that field, and Mongoose will take care of that for us. Yeah. Mongoose has ways of defining and working with dates within a schema, which you can read about in the documentation, if you need something else. Right, like if we were building out like a user and we wanted their birth date, right, then we could do birth date is a type date. So our users are going to post the URL to an article. Yeah, so we'll need a URL. And that will be of type string. And then the last thing we'll need, well, not necessarily the last thing that we need. We can put anything we want here, but for our purposes, let's add comments, which is going to be an array. So we have our schema for an article. Now we need to actually turn our schema into a model, which we do with var article is equal to mongoose.model article schema. For our conceptual purposes, the model, or the part of the model that we care about is really the schema. This is where we're going to refer to when we are building out our form for adding a new article, for instance, right? Like we're going to need a field for all of these with the exception maybe of comments. This model method in Mongoose is doing a bunch of stuff behind the scenes to build out a collection for storing all of the models in our application, right? Like the part of our database which actually houses every single article. It's doing a bunch of other stuff behind the scenes, but that's the part that we care about. That's to say that when we see this word model and this word schema, when we're talking conceptually about a model, we need all of it. Technically though, in the way that Mongoose has been built, there's some model object inside of this Mongoose object that's going to have this called article, or that we're calling article, and passing our schema. And then it's going to build out a model based on this schema. Does that make sense? Kind of? Yeah.
So that, when you say mongoose model article schema, that article should be same as the name of the variable that we define, or could be any?
Yeah, so these should be the same. These should be the same. So that like we're always referring to the same thing in the same way within our application. This is how Mongoose is going to store instances of our article in the database with reference to this article. So it's important that we like remember that and stick with that as we're building out the rest of our application so that we're getting the data that we want. But yeah. Yeah?
I was gonna say in this data type or the object, if it's, another way to think about it is called article schema.
Say that one more time?
I was just trying to think of it as what we learned last week, where she drew out a table, and I think it's called, and I'm trying to relate it to this code, and it's called article schema, like that's the name of the table.
Yeah, yeah. If we're thinking of
Excel document.
yeah, like an Excel document. If you think of an Excel document, right, like the whole document is going to be our HackerWall database. Within that, we're going to have a sheet called article. That's going to have what are they, columns? Columns for our author, title, description, URL, comments. Created at, updated at, and ID. Those are some that Mongoose gives us for free. And then the title of that sheet down at the bottom left is going to be article, because that's what we're referring to it as here.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So are we done with step 4? Yeah. So we've got this model in this article.js model file, but currently we have no way of using it anywhere else. So we've got a couple more like cleanup things that we have to do. So module.exports is equal to post. Not post, sorry. We've been calling it article here, so I've been trying to go with that, but in the solution I called it post. So I've been trying to like transpose it, and I done goofed. If I ever say post anywhere else, that's why, and just like flag it. Heckle me. Yeah, exactly. Now we need this article in our controller so that we can work with it, right? So that we can find instances of our articles. So we've got to come back here to our index.js file. And how might we get that article model into our controller here?
Require it.
Sorry?
Require it.
Yeah. So something like var, I will say it again, var article equals require models article, I think it's singular, yeah, article.
Is there a reason the space between that requiring or stuff like that signify something to you?
Oh, here, like these and these?
Yes.
Yeah. So these are all of our dependencies. Typically, we'll put those all the way at the top, and then we'll have spacing to kind of like separate the different parts of this file. We have the next step, right? Like now we have this article model, but are we connected to our database here? No. We'll do that here, in between these two blocks of code. Do you guys remember how to connect to a database in Express using Mongoose? Did you guys cover it briefly last week? So there's a couple things that I need to do. I've already required Mongoose, right? That's what I'm going to use to interface with my database. Is my database running? No. So I'm gonna come back to the terminal here. And I'm gonna type mongo. It's gonna do all this crazy stuff. And I'm good. Now my database is running. Yeah, Mongo. I don't know why it's called Mongo. That's kind of confusing. This is starting a database server specifically, which is a kind of server that manages the database, right? Not too different from the server that we're building, but specific for Mongo. And then down here in the bottom right, I have this port number. I need this port number so that I can connect to the Mongo server so that I can create a database in that server and then work with any data that's in that database. So mine is 27017. Yours will probably be the same, but it might not necessarily be. So now I'm back here in my index.js file. I want to connect to Mongo. Does anybody remember how to do that? How to connect to Mongo through Mongoose? What was it? Yeah, mongoose.connect. We're going to use the connect method to connect to that server. What do I pass this connect method? Yeah. The path to our database. So MongoDB / localhost, that port, right? And then slash, and then this is where I'm going to put the name of my database, which we'll call HackerWall. Behind the scenes, Mongoose is going to connect to our server and then create a collection within our server called HackerWall, which is where all of our documents will go. All right.
Do you need to be somewhere specific for the Mongo to even work?
If no, you should be able to run it anywhere. Yeah. What's likely happening is it's just not set up. It's likely just needs some more configuration or something like that. Okay. So referring back to our steps, have we created and built out our model? Have we?
Wait, yeah, wait.
Have we?
Yes.
Do we have a model?
Yeah, we have a model and it's all the models we need.
Yeah, it's all the models we need. So we're done with this step. As a bonus, we've also established a connection to our database.
So those HackerWall is just a name.
Yep. Name of our what we want the database to be called.
We can use whatever word.
Yeah. You
So
can.
does it create it?
Yep.
Based on us saying it's called this?
Yes.
What if we already had one?
Then when we run this, it'll throw an error.
Okay, so if we already had one with that name and just connect to it.
Oh, yeah.
Connect it again? Or?
It would connect to it. It would connect to it. Yeah, no, that's absolutely right.
Or if you weren't hosting, I mean, I know I haven't thought of those, but if you're not hosting locally, would it be like a URL?
Yep. There are a lot of services that will host data for you, like be database hosts. AWS has one. I forget what it's called. But yeah, there are a bunch. And it would just be the URL to whatever database you want. Yeah.
Going back to article.js, the last line, which we export that module export. This one exported data to the article or export this file to index.js. I just don't understand what exactly this is.
So this article variable here is going to be an object with a bunch of properties and methods for us to interact with the database through Mongoose. So we're going to export that object so that we can import it in index.js, and then in index.js have this article variable here, which has all those properties and methods for interacting with our database, so that we can do something like article.find or update or something like that. Okay. So we are now done with step 4. We're almost done. Step 5 is going to be to build out our views. Are we ready to build out our views? Sorry. Yeah, this is the fun part. Does our application know that we want to use handlebars? Nope. Not yet. So let's do app.engine, right? Handlebars, HBS, default layout, main, app.set, view, engine, handlebars, something like that. That should be all we need to do, right? Is it a trick question? I don't know. Maybe it's a trick, but it's a trick question. Whoa. Okay. So our view engine is set. The next thing I'm going to do is app.use express.static public. This is like a helper method for us. So this is a helper for us. What we're going to want is a CSS file, for instance, right? So that we can style our application. We may want some front-end JavaScript so that we can add an event listener and then click on a button and control what happens with that event listener. We don't want to have to write a route for each of those files. So instead, we can tell Express that we have static assets. This could also include images, for instance. And we're going to say that those static assets are in a public folder. What that's going to let us do is reference those in our views. In our handlebars templates, like main.css. And when our server gets a request for main.css, it'll just pull it from the public folder. Yeah.
So do we need to specify each file separately, or when we just say public, it brings up all the files and everything which is public?
This is gonna, so it's not gonna bring up every file. It's gonna bring up the file that was requested. So when we ask for a main.css file in our HTML, what that's gonna be here is localhost 3000/main.css. Or if we were hosting this somewhere, it would be www.mydomain.com/main.css. That's a request, a GET request, for a file to our server. What we don't want to have to do is go through this file or anywhere in our application and build out a route that's going to take care of that. Instead, we'll tell Express that that stuff lives in this public folder. So anytime there's a request for it, it will just look there. but we don't have a public folder. So let's make one. And in it, we'll add a main.css file. This is where we'll add all the styling for our application. All right. So we're on step 5 here, building out our views. But I wanted to offer that so that we could, I don't know, move along, I guess. Like have these available to us. This is maybe you want to add a CSS file to your lab. That would be great. This is how you would do that. Or if you want to do front-end JavaScript, this is how you would do that. We can go ahead and get started rendering our views. But first I'm going to offer one more freebie, which is app.use body parser. This is going to set up body parser for us. Rich, did you guys talk about, did you guys walk through this last week sometime? Using body parser? Maybe, maybe not. If not, this is all we need to do to set up body parser. And then Express will take care of the rest. All right.
If you don't have Express.
All right.
For the app I use Express by static, you should express the app.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah. Oh man, I didn't think about that. It does have to be express.static. That's a bummer. That means I can't do this. Good catch.
Why was that the case?
Static is a method on this express object. So actually, maybe it would have worked. Yeah, I think it would have worked actually. I'm going to stick with this because this is how I have it in the solution, and I don't want to derail from that too much and then run into errors or something like that that we then have to debug here and like take away time from actually finishing this.
Like thinking the errors on the Express. I think it's something.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
it's only like returning back like one aspect of Express, not the entire.
Yeah, so this is going to return a function that we're then going to call to generate our app. And then, yeah, I guess I don't know exactly what this looks like on the inside, but it has a static method that we're calling.
So I mean, if you had like, if we didn't have separate variables for Express and then add, then we'd be limited in the use of.
Oh, so I'm not sure. I think that if we had app here, it would have worked, but I'm not positive. So we're just going to do it like this. Okay, so now we're ready to build out our views. Let's start with our layout. Does that sound good?
You mean a main?
Yeah, our layout. Yeah, our layout. We've called it main. It's in our layouts folder. This is a layout for an HTML page. So HTML, something like that. We'll call it hacker wall. We will include a link to just main.css. Right? And we're going to have inside of our body tag here, we're going to have a header, which is going to have an H1 with an A that goes back to our I'll copy and paste all of this into the slide so we have it. Hacker wall up at the top. And then let's have another A for articles new. Like that. And then, let's see, what do I want to do here? I want to give this a class. That's going to be my header. Here, I'm going to output the body. And then down here, I'll have a footer, which will just have, actually, we won't need a folder. We don't need a footer. You want to put privacy policy? Are you going to write one real fast? Okay, I just posted that in the general channel.
Hey, Zach.
Yeah.
When you run this app and it makes connection to MongoDB, should you be able to see the database when you like Mongo show and then you say show?
Yeah, it should be there. It might not be because we've only connected to it. Mongoose might be waiting until we try and add a record to create the database.
Can you also add your index.js?
Yeah, that's what we're gonna add right now. So let's see. Is that my index.js? Oh, wait, what did you mean?
Oh, to
Oh.
throw it in the slide.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, and now we're going to build out the home page. What I'm going to do here is use the main HTML element. And then within that, we're going to want to, for now, let's just do test. How about that? So we have our index view, right? This is going to be the view for our home page. What we want to do is get this working with our controller so that when we go to our home page route, we see this view. And then we'll come back and we'll edit this. So what do I need to do here in order to render my index view? What function do I call?
Render.
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 Yeah. And let's see, this should be a good gut check because we've been going for a while without actually doing anything. There we go. Great. Look at this.
What happens when you like create article?
Create article. I think we'll get, yeah. Oh, because I said articles instead of article. I'm gonna go, I can't see my back button. It's not good. There it is. So you might not be able to see it, but it's spinning. We never do anything in that route handler. We never send a response back. So it's hanging up and eventually it's going to throw an error. So we won't worry about that now.
Wait, isn't that how we've been doing stuff? It'll just render and not really.
Yeah, so when we do a render, we're finishing the response and sending something back to the client. So it is complete and we see something here. Right now, /article/new doesn't do anything. So a response never gets sent back to the client. So the client is here just waiting for a response. And after a certain amount of time, it'll just time out and say, something's wrong with the server. Okay. So, and oh yeah, here, no, here. Res.render index.
You should specify the paths of that index handlebar. When you say index, it knows
Oh,
where the
when we say index, it's going to look for index.handlebar inside of our views folder. That's a convention that Express Handlebars implements for us. Okay. So do we have any posts in our database? No. So we can't really render a post right now and make sure this is working, right? Or not post, excuse me, article.
We just pass like pseudo object.
Yeah, let's like render a fake one. How about that? So up here, I'm going to do var test article is equal to new article. And then I'm going to do what was it? URL is equal to www.google.com. Author is equal to me. I built Google. Title is going to be Google. And then the description is going to be a really great search or something like that. Then I'm going to do test article.save. This save method is going to create a record in my database for this article that we've built out here. And I think that if we go back here, we can see it. We cannot. Never mind.
But if you open a new tab and then go module,
It's not there.
well, I don't know, I have.
So we have an application that we're building out that we can use to see it. So we'll come here, here we are, in our index route. What we want is to pass something like posts is equal to an object which has all of our posts in it. Do we have an object that has all of our posts in it? Not posts, articles. I did it again. You guys were supposed to heckle me.
Yeah.
We have an object that has all of our articles in it.
Yeah, that's article.
That has one article, which I guess is, yeah, that has all of them. What we need to do is article is the object for interfacing with all the articles in our database. We need to run a query in our database, which we do with the find method. That is then going to find all of the articles that match our query parameters. So like, not query parameters, but the parameters of the query. Which in our case is just an empty object. It takes a callback, right? Which takes two parameters. An error, if there's an error in executing this query. And then an object that has all of the results of this query. So this is going to get every article from our database, from our articles. Then within that callback, we can call res.render and pass in all of these articles.
So, is it also possible to do, maybe it's not conventional, but is it also possible to like save that, that block without res render inside, save that to a variable and then pass that to res render.
Yeah, so do something like res render down here.
Yeah, and then where you save the output from article find.
So I don't think article.find will have a return value. I think that, and because as we talked about, Node is asynchronous, so I think if we did something like var articles, and then in here said articles is equal to articles, right? So take this result and assign it here. What would happen is this line would run, so we would create a variable called articles, and then this line would run. So it would go to the database and try and run this query.
Render runs.
Then res render would run before this came back.
So it would
Yeah, so it would work. So now, inside of our index.handlebars file, we have access to all of those articles as articles. So we should be able to loop over them. How should we do this? Let's do a div with a class of article. And then inside of that div, let's do h3 with the title. Span with the author. And then let's do a p tag with the description. Now, if we don't have any errors, this should work. Which it doesn't look like we have any errors. So if I come here and I refresh, there we go. It created a bunch. This is an issue with NodeMon. Every time we hit save, our server reran. And because every time we're running this index.js file, we're creating the object here. Every time it restarted the server, it ran this, and so it created a new one.
Can we add an if statement to say if the database is empty or null?
Yeah, or we could just not do this, which is a better practice, because we have a view which is going to take care of creating a new article, right? Should we build that out next? Index.handlebars here. There we go. Okay.
So if you just wanted to, like, let's say you wanted to launch this site or something, you wanted to have one example article in there, would you just add it yourself in the front end, or like?
Yeah, you can do what's called seeding the database, which is creating a data set that you then run. You can also, you have ways of dropping the database. So if it exists, if there's already a database that exists on the server, empty it, and then you start fresh, so then you reseed the database, etc. But that's all stuff that you can look up in the documentation if you're interested. Yeah, it's not really something we're going to talk about here.
Can you see your, we created your test article?
Oh, I just deleted it because we're going to build out this new view here next. Okay. So when I make a GET request to /article/new, I just want to render new.handlebars, right? Right? New? Yeah. So res.render, yeah, I think is what I've called it. Yeah. No, my new, oh, sorry, pop. My new file, my new.handlebars, is going to contain, let's say, a title, something like that, and then a form. We won't do that. The method is going to be a post request, right? We want to make a post request. So our method will be post. The action will be /post, not post, /articles. There we go. /article /new. There we go. This is where we want to send our post request to. Inside of my post, I'll have a P, or inside of my form, excuse me, I'll have a P, which is going to have a label that says URL, and then input, which is a type of URL. I will also have a P with a label for the author, and then input type of text. We want to call this author URL. Let's do, what else do we have? Yeah, the description. So let's do a P. We'll do a label. This is going to be description or something like that. And then let's do a text area. Name is description. Like that. Oh yeah, and then a title. Let's put the title. Let's put the title up here at the top. Wow. Input. There we go. Type text. Name is title. We have our title, our URL, our author, and our description. I've saved this, and our server should render it. So unless there are any errors, if we come here and we refresh and we click create article, do I have an S there? So here it's article new, here it's article new. This one here?
Yeah.
There we go. Okay. So that'll save us when we actually submit this form. In the meantime, what's going on here? Size
Yeah,
article
so
new.
multiple. Can you restart your database or,
No, it should work. We can try restarting Express.
Yeah, Jay deleted that, like, article as well, right?
Right.
All that.
That did not work either.
well, in the main handlebar, the article is multiple. It's articles.
Oh, I thought I fixed that. Yeah, so it's /article /new. That's the link that I'm clicking right now. Oh, you know what it is? Oh, okay. So articles are matched in order. So does anybody see what I'm doing wrong?
You have the route into the AP first. and
Yeah.
it's looking for that one first.
We're not hitting this route. We're hitting this one. Because we have this parameter here. This parameter is a placeholder for anything. A number, an ID. We're calling it ID because that's what we think of it as. But for Express, it's whatever. Anything that comes after /article. So in order for this to work, I have to bring this down here.
Could you have used the question mark? Like,
query parameters.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, no, I still run into the same issue.
Oh.
It's an issue of sorting. The query parameters would make this more complicated.
Okay.
Yeah. So now, if I come back here, yeah, there we go. Ta-da! My beautiful form. Now, we don't have any way of submitting this form. Oh, I close that because we don't need it anymore. So I'm going to do, what is it? Input type submit. And if I refresh this, then I get that beautiful looking button. Now, when I submit this form, I'll be making a post request to /article/new, which is that other route that I have here. So I first hit this one, now I'm hitting this one. Here, what I want to do is, sorry? Well, what do I want to do here?
Shouldn't we listen to the submit button to submit?
We'll use the default behavior. So someone will submit it, it'll bundle up all the data in that form into an object and submit a post request to this URL. And then we have to handle that URL. Here, we want to take the data that's in that request. We want to pass it to our article model and create a new article.
Can you create an object that inputs from like a body?
Yeah, that's exactly what we're going to do. So var new article is equal to a new article, right? With URL equal to rec.body.url. Author equal to rec.body.author. Title rec.body.title, and description. There we go. This is going to create a new article for us. That thing is off. There we go. And we'll do new article dot save. That will save it to the database. And then for now, let's just make sure it's working with .redirect, and we'll go back to the home page. We can get this so that it'll implement the show view for this particular article once we've built that up. So, oops. What the hell is that? Oh, yeah. There we go. And here's Facebook down here at the bottom. So it worked.
How come it had a preloaded like error message?
That was just Chrome. I'm using the URL input field type. So Chrome has its own, like, what do you call that? Error handling.
Does it also have validation?
I guess valid.
Yeah, that's what that was. It was validation. Okay, so I'll stop there. I will push the solution. We're pretty close to having it finished. The only thing we need to do left is build out this route handler to take the ID from our request, make a find, like do a search in the database for any article with that ID, and then render our show view, which we still have to build out, with that object for that instance of the article. The solution will show you how to do that, so I'll push it right now so that you guys can see it. Yeah. So, okay, I will be doing office hours tomorrow. It's my fiance's birthday on Sunday, so Christina and I are going to switch. Otherwise, my fiance will be very upset if I have to come in here and do office hours instead. So I'll be here from 5:30 to 7:30 tomorrow. The project is live. The link is in your lab for next class is live. The link is in your README. You're welcome to look at it and get started, or wait and get started next time, and we'll talk a little bit about it next time. It'll be due at the beginning of class next Tuesday. So the next class. Cool. But it'll be 5:30 to 7:30 tomorrow. Yeah. All right. Thanks so much, you guys. Sorry this ran a little long.
Please. Your Oracle dot safe in this case, is that a part of
Ooh, you don't go anywhere.
that?
Yeah.
Modules?
Yes. That's how Mongoose handles creating videos. Yeah.
Alright, can I ask you this question? So instead of clicking submitting.
Yeah.
You wanted this to happen when you just like hover over that button?
Have a good one. Yeah.
How do you do that?
You would have a event listener on that button for the hover event, and then when a mouse enter or mouse over one of those, when that event gets fired, you would have an event handler that would bundle up your form, all the data from your form, and then make a post request using Ajax. All right, does that make sense? Kind of. Thanks, guys. It depends on where I